Hey guys, welcome to our YouTube channel Mainframe Girls. In the last video, I have explained you about the non-VSAM dataset attributes, about record format, how affixed, how variable, how the records are being arranged in a dataset. Now we'll see about the space allocation, how a space is calculated, how much space you give while creating a dataset, and how it is getting allocated while the dataset is being created. So this is a panel where you give the space attributes when you're creating through a panel wise, when you're creating a data set through a panel wise. Now I'll explain you about the primary quantity, average record unit, secondary quantity, directory blocks. Like how much you give, how it is getting allocated, and space units also. And space units. What is a block, what is track, what is cylinders, how much KB they are, how much MB they are, like how you give each and every point and how they get calculated when you give some certain numbers in those places. The data set attributes which we are seeing now, as I told you, space allocation, space parameters. There are many types in like how you give a space. Like there is units, like how you weigh something, kgs, grams, like that. Here you have another unit called tracks, cylinders. It's the basic calculation here is one track is equals to 56 kb and one cylinder is equals to 15 tracks. 15 tracks. Okay, so you specify which type of, like you need something in grams, you need something in kilograms, something you need in milligrams. Like when you buy something from grocery store, you take it like that, in that way. So in the same way, when you're allocating a data set with some space, you say I need it in tracks, I need it in cylinders. That's how, if there is a volume, if it's a tape volume, if it is a DASD volume, it takes the allocation in the volume starts like that. It's, if you are asking it for tracks, it will allocate in the track wise. As I told you, what is a block before, a fixed block, variable block, how the blocks will be. If you want that space in blocks, you give that average block length. Means this, I need my block length to be 300 bytes, I need my block length to be this much, like that. You specify some number like 300 bytes or 1000, like 10, 20, 30, like that. You'll specify number for blocks. And when it comes to records, you have three types here. When you're because when you're creating in records, when you specify records, you have to give an average record length. There is another attribute which, when you're only specifying records, you have to give that attribute. It says like UKM. There will be three separate parameters here. I'll explain you later. But so these are the basic space units which you see, like tracks, cylinders. Normally you mostly create a data set in tracks and cylinders. Not, and if there is some variable data set, you want data set to be particularly in this length, in this type, or if the input data set is like that and the output data, according to the requirement, the records and blocks come into picture. But mostly if you're creating a data set, you give tracks or cylinders. Here is the next quantity is called primary quantity. Like if your data set need 300 tracks, okay, if your data set needs some 1000 cylinders, so you say my primary quantity is 300. When you first say that I need my space unit should be track and my primary quantity should be 300, then when you're creating a data set, the initial allocation, as soon as the data set is getting created, it automatically gets that 300 tracks. It will get, if you're using that 300 tracks, if you're not using that 300 tracks, it doesn't matter. It automatically gives you that 300 tracks. Take it, this is the space which you have allocated. That's what a primary quantity means. If you're specifying cylinders as a space unit and you say I need 1000 cylinders of space, and you just go in the primary quantity should be, then automatically this 1000 cylinders will be occupied in one volume. Means, see, there are some constraints here. Like if you are specifying 1000 cylinders, there should be this continuous space available in that particular volume, because the primary quantity is something. Suppose if you're giving primary quantity equals to 100, if there is a volume in which there is space, but suppose there is space of 500 tracks, 500 tracks of space is there, but it is not continuous, then this will not allocate this space. When you're saying primary quantity 50 or 100, that should be a continuous space which you need in a particular volume to be allocated. Then comes into picture secondary quantity. If the data set needs more space, like there is a small allocation when you're creating through a code, you say space is equals to, I need it in tracks, and you say primary quantity is 100, and you say secondary quantity is 50. So this is how you allocate when you're doing through coding. So you say this is primary quantity, this is secondary quantity, this is a space unit. This is how I need 100 tracks initial allocation. As soon as the data set is creating, the volume gives you tuck 100 tracks to you. And but what is this 50 tracks then? Why this 50 tracks is needed? Okay, so when the data set, you want the data set to be extended, you want, as I told you, a word, if you remember, extend. When you want your data set to be extend, it's not, if 100 tracks is not enough for the data set, you need more tracks. Then the secondary allocation comes into picture. You this When after 100 tracks, what happens? It takes, if you need another next one-on-one track, what it will do? It will ask a secondary, it will take one space from here. So 100 plus 50. If after this 150 tracks is completed, again it says I need another one, my data set has to extend more, I need more space, again you will get 50. And here the question is, how many times this 50 will be added? It depends on the dataset type. As I told you, how many maximum extents a dataset can extend. If it is a PDS file, it can go up to 123 extents. If it's a PS file on a single volume, it can go up to 16. So it depends on if suppose you're creating a simple basic PS file on a single volume, suppose if you're giving this much space, it will be like 100 plus 50 into 16. So this is the whole space which it will be created. That much of tracks it will take. It's like 16 5 800 plus 100. So completely 900. 900 tracks it will give, like if complete one volume. And depends, as I told you, I'll tell you how many extents, how many maximum extents a data set can reach. In that way, as that many times the secondary extent will give you the space. If it is 16, it will give you 16 times. If it is 123, it will give you 123 times. It is 255, it will give you 255 times. So that many times the secondary space can be giving you in this space unit. If you say it is I need in tracks, it will give you 50 tracks. If it say I need in cylinders, it will give you 50 cylinders. It should not be continuous space. There is no need that to be a continuous space. Only the primary space should be, when you're giving some 100 tracks, when you're giving some 200 tracks, the primary space should be a continuous space. Means when there would be some errors, basic errors, which we say SB37, SD37, SE37. These are the basic errors which you encounter when the space issue comes. I'll explain you these errors properly in the next video. So that's how it will be, the primary quantity and secondary quantity. When you're creating a basic PS file, you have to be so sure how much primary quantity you're giving, how much secondary quantity you're giving according to the requirement. Here comes the next parameter, which is, as I told you, primary, secondary. Primary, secondary is enough for the PS file, a basic flat file, that is enough, right? But what about the PDS file, which need members? And how do you tell how many members does it need? That's how, by 6n minus 1. Suppose if you're creating, you say, as I told you, you can put all group of data sets in one place, right? If you say I need 50 files in that, I need in one data set, you create a data set with this name abc.abc, and you say I need 50 members in it. So that how can you say what is the directory block you can give? Suppose you need 50, you give 6n minus 1, right? 6, you give directory blocks n is equals to 9. Okay, so n equals to 9. When then it will be like 54 minus 1, it will be 53. Then you can create 53 members in it. So it depends on according to the requirement, like how you can give in the space is equals to the space unit. You say I need in tracks, and you say the primary quantity is 100 and secondary is 50, and I need directory blocks as 9. So this is the third parameter where you give 9. This is directory block, this is secondary quantity, this is primary quantity, this is space unit. That's how you specify in a code, and while you're creating through a panel, you give in the panel where it says directory blocks, you give 9, saying that I need 50. If you need 50, it depends on the requirement. If you need 100, you give another number. It depends on requirement, how many members you want to create in that type. You give this is the number I need, so this is the number I can give as an indirectory block. Like I told you, if you need a 53, if you need 50, you say I need 15 members, 50 members, then you say directory blocks equals to 9, and it gets calculated by 6 and minus 1. So here's the next one, which is average record unit. So when you specify, as I told you, space is equals to, you give here space unit. But when you specify space unit instead of tracks, cylinders, if you have specified records or blocks, you have to specify this average record unit should U, K or M. If it is U, it is a scale of 1. If it's K, it's 1024, and if it's M, it is 1048576. Okay, so how this is calculated? As I told you, okay, when it is track, it is 56 kb. Okay, when it is cylinders, it is one track is equals to one cylinder is equals to 15 tracks. Okay, 15 tracks. But what about this calculation, how records and blocks are calculated? So when here how it works is, you give space is equals to, you say space is equals to, you suppose you need your record length, your average. You give here the average block size or average record length, how much you need. Like I told you, like fixed block or fixed. If it is block, you give blocks, right? There, if suppose you give, if say I need 80, and you say primary as 50 and secondary as some 2, and this is how you have given the space unit here when you have mentioned 80. And now you have to specify another parameter which is called avgrec, that is average record. That should be instead of u, k, m or anything. Suppose I have specified k here, avgrec is equals to k. How it is getting calculated? Now when I say it is tracks, it comes under 56 kb, 15 1 cylinder equals to 15. When it is like this, it is like avgrec is k, right? K means 1024. So how it is getting calculated? You say 80 into 50 into 1024 is the primary quantity. And coming to secondary quantity will be 80 into 2 into 1024. Okay, so it comes in that way. So this is how this much of primary quantity will be allocated at once, and this much of secondary quantity will be held when it is required. So that's how average record unit is specified when you're giving records or blocks or record or blocks, and you have to specify this parameter called average rec, so that it knows how it has to be calculated and how much like if it has to be 1024, if it's 1, or it should be 1048576. And here's another, the last one, normally which is not required when you're creating through code, but when you're creating through panels, you have to mention if it is a library, if it's a PDS or the large or the basic. Basic is not required, but normally in the last you have to mention whether this is a PDS file. It lasts, there's a dataset organization, there is a sentence, there is a filling for dataset organization. You can give here library, PDS, large, basic, anything when according to the requirement. But when you're creating through a job or through a program, there is no need of giving this dataset organization always. Sometimes if it is required, you want your dataset to be particularly in that type for that input file. So means for that requirement of or for that application, then you have to mention DO. It says DO. DO is equals to PO or PS or like this large or PDS, like that you have to mention. So these are the basic dataset attributes which I have mentioned past two videos. In this video I've explained you all the specifications, which all the basic specifications which you can be using to create a basic data set without any fail with this basic requirements. So in the next video, I'll explain you how to create a data set through using a panels, how you give the values and how you have to see where it got created and how can you analyze the data in it. I'll explain you how to basically create a data set. So thank you for watching the video. Please kindly share, like and subscribe.